Okay, we are back here with the ET48 2.0 build, and this is bag C, which is the front gearbox, and I am going to jump straight in. So the first step on this, I've already inspected all these parts and the flashings. There's not really, I couldn't find many flashings on these parts, which was really good. There's actually a little one right there, and then there's a little one right at the top here. But mostly these flashings are pretty good. They're like in non-discrete locations. All right, so the first step here is we're gonna put these bearings in this gearbox, and the small one goes on the outside. And again, the Tekno bearings have rubber shields on both sides, so it doesn't matter what orientation you put these in, but big one on the inside, small one on the outside. And then we're gonna put the pinion gear in the gearbox. And then there's this little shim that we're gonna push on the shaft here. And then we put this Outdrive cup on here, and it's important. There's a flat spot right there on that shaft, and it's important that that flat spot is aligned with the hole in this Outdrive cup. And I just push that on all the way, and then we're going to install this set screw. And this set screw, both in the front and the rear, is literally the most common screw that's going to come loose on a new kit. And so is what I do to help prevent that is I get some brake cleaner or electronics cleaner or motor spray, and I clean this set screw and this Outdrive where the threads are. You clean that out because they'll have some grease residue left in them. And so you just clean that out. And then the other thing I'm going to do is we're going to coat this screw with quite a bit, like be generous with the thread lock. And so then you just hold this together here and put that in like so. And that feels good. There's just like a tiny bit of play, but I actually like that. So like just ever so slight, it like helps with the rotation of these bearings. Okay, so that's in there. You can wipe off the excess thread lock, but I think I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I do anything with that. And then we're going to put this little Diff cover on this thing. All right, so yeah, back on this cover, it's just important. This thing's pretty tight, and there was a little teeny flashing sticking off on an edge that I just cut off with this X-Acto knife, but you just kind of work it in, work around it, and work the whole thing in until all sides drop in and are flush with the bottom of this gear housing. So I've done that. And then we're going to stick these little tiny screws in here. And, just keep in mind, the smaller the screw head, the less tight you need to go with things. Or if you go too tight, you'll strip it out. So, I just go basically get that head flush and give it a little tweak, and that's all you need to do. Like, Most parts in an RC car, you do not have to make them gorilla tight, especially when they're going into plastic. And the bigger the screw head, then the more tight you typically want to be, and as well as the longer the screw. Like this set screw is the one exception. Like I make those pretty tight. Okay, so next step here is we're gonna put the diff in, and this is the front gearbox, so we're gonna make sure that we grab the ring gear that we marked 20 on it. And so with Teknos, you install this ring gear when you're looking towards the pinion. You install it to the right. So on this side, not like that, but like this. And then with a truggy, you can, well, with any 8-scale vehicle, you control the ring and pinion gear mesh with these shims. But with a truggy, I always like to start with both of them on the ring side to tighten that gear mesh as much as possible. And the reason why you want to do that is because the pinion gear is fairly small. There's only 9 teeth on it. And that smaller diameter, it can make these things skip if you don't do the gear mesh super tight. So once you put those 2 shims on this side, then you'll just hold this Outdrive with your fingers and test that gear mesh. And I typically like to have, the amount of space you have between the 2 teeth, that's called backlash. And I like to typically have really no backlash. And is what I'll tell you is this one has ever so slightest bit of backlash, but I'm going to say that is good. So is what we're going to do here is we're going to put grease on the ring gear. Grease this thing up, and this is just the stock Tekno black grease. And just put some grease. I like to put it all the way around and then kind of work it in between the ring and pinion, like so. And then once you get that going, you put this case on, and we're going to install these 2 screws in the top. One. And I do a lot of my, especially a new kit, I do a lot of stuff by hand. You don't have to, but I like to cut the threads and feel how much torque I put on these screws. So I just do a lot of stuff by hand here. Okay, so we got those in. And every time you put screws in, you just want to double check that everything feels right, and feel this gear mesh all the way around. Like there's like a little bit of a notch right in there, but that stuff it'll work its way out as this thing breaks in. All right, so we're gonna set that gearbox aside, and the next thing is we want to build up the shock tower. Okay, so next step here, we're gonna build up this tower assembly, and you'll notice there's this indentation on this side and no indentation on that side, and so you just want to use that as a reference. And so these shock standoffs, they go in on the same side as that indentation. And I'm not building, the kit setup has it in the second hole. I'm not building to the kit setup. I'm building to a different setup. So I'm going to use the third hole out. And we screw that in like that. And this one in like so. Okay, and then you grab this is a 7mm, and this is my turnbuckle wrench. This is a 5.5mm turnbuckle wrench I can hold all this with. And we just crank that down. And we'll do the same over here with this one. Try to do the same with that one. Alright, I'm trying to show you guys on camera and my dexterity is not cooperating. Okay, let's do it that way. And you know, if these screws have these nuts have nylock in them, but if you ever have ones that don't, then make sure you thread lock those so they don't come unloose when you're trying to take your shocks off. Okay, so then we're gonna stick these body mounts in, and they go opposite the side that your shock standoffs are pointing. And you push them through and drop them into that recess that I mentioned to you before. And then we're going to take these longer screws, and you might have to get the hole to line up and play with that a little bit. There we go. Put these screws in like so. And then, because I'm getting older, I'm going to drive these in. With the Dewalut, and we'll finish them off by hand. Again, just because I like to feel how tight I'm making these. All right, got those in there. So then, yeah, the next step is we're gonna stick this tower actually on the gearbox. And so this tower goes this way, shock standoffs pointing, actually, no, this way. Shock standoffs point forward, body mounts point back. So it goes this way, and then these 4 screws are going to go in and hold this in place. So we'll alright, this thing is being irritating. Okay, so these were they're being a little bit temperamental to put in. So I actually ended up pre-threading those and then screwing them in there, and then these other 2, yeah, they should go nicely in now. Now that I've got kind of a guide, and this, you know, it's the tower getting it pushed up flat and then putting these screws in is really the main trick to getting these to go in and getting them in straight. Alright, and we'll just check the tightness of all these. And there we go. That is bag C, which is the front gearbox, fully complete. So hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe.